Deaths from the coronavirus have devastated millions across the world. Many couldn't say goodbye to their loved ones. Funerals were restricted, making grieving difficult. But even in normal circumstances, 1 in 10 affected typically develop prolonged grief disorder. COVID deaths have been even more traumatic for the bereaved, especially at a time when getting the support they need isn't always possible.
I'm Ben Fazul, and nice to have you along. Dealing with grief is hard enough, but in the middle of a lockdown, during the panic of a pandemic, or surrounded by bulldozers filling mass graves, that's not easy. But it's important to deal with. There are major health problems to think about and consequences for life. DW's Terry Schultz reports on one Belgian family's loss.
The world has lost 1 million lives. One of them meant the world to 10-year-old Lorenzo.
My grandpa was the best.
His grandpa Luke picked him up from school each day.
And what did you guys do?
We made homework, and after that, we just laid in the couch and just did what we want to do. Mostly I got snacks.
But their hometown, St. Truden, was hit early and hard by the coronavirus.
We had 53 people who had to enter the hospital, and we only had beds for 20 people.
But Luke was already hospitalized, failing fast.
He said, if I don't make it, please take good care of the children.
He didn't make it. On March 23rd, Luke became St. Truden's first corona death. Janine, their daughters Nella and Lane, and Lorenzo didn't even get to say goodbye.
I had it really hard. It struck us really hard. Yes.
Mayor Veerle Heren felt it personally. Her husband became critically ill, but survived.
It was a terrible time for the families, but also for us as a mayor, but also all the people, my policemen, the people in the town who were working 24 hours a day.
6 months later, St. Truden has the infection rate under control with strict measures. Father Wim Kuenen says now inhabitants need to heal.
It's important that we share with each other what we feel, what we want, our anxiety, but also the good things.
Mayor Heren decided to create a space for that. A corner of a city park is now a memorial. The theme, Forget Me Not. Plenty of those flowers have been planted by city landscaper Didier Summers, along with a tree of life and a plaque bearing a poem.
In a hard winter, the flowers will come, so yeah, even when it's sad, it will be a little bit beautiful.
For the memorial's dedication September 13th, Lorenzo was asked to commemorate his beloved grandfather. He told his mom Nelle he was too afraid.
Because I thought they were gonna laugh at me.
But Lorenzo changed his mind and wrote Luke a letter.
Lieve opa, dear grandpa, I miss you very much. I am mad about corona, mad about what happened. You were the best and always are gonna be the best.
What did you think when you saw yourself up there?
That I was brave and that I was happy that I did it, that I could throw it all out. I was happy. Everyone was.
That's right.
Even my grandpa.
No one here will forget them.
Really powerful stuff there. And a great message about dealing with grief. Well, Martin Eisma is an assistant professor for the Department of Psychology at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. How do you deal with not being able to say goodbye?
So this is obviously a very difficult situation. What we see is that a lot of people are not able to be physically present during when the person dies, and also that funerals can be quite limited in how they are arranged, so that not so many people can be there. The example we just saw, where there's a collective ritual to deal with these losses, I think that's great. I think you can also create more private rituals with friends or people close to the deceased, to say goodbye to the deceased again, when you weren't able to do that well before.
What is it about the pandemic? What else is there that's making it so hard for people to cope with losses like these?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things to consider. Of course, not being able to say goodbye or not being able to say goodbye the way you want to is definitely one of these factors. But there are also many additional stressors that people are now experiencing. For instance, they might feel it's more difficult to get social support, feel socially isolated, lonely. It could also be that they're afraid to become ill themselves, restricted to house, or that they have certain other losses that they have to deal with, such as financial losses or losses of jobs and livelihood.
Just in normal...
If you look...
sorry, Martin, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that if you look at COVID-19 deaths specifically, then it's a different story still, because then people are also dealing with a sudden loss, and a loss that occurs after some time in intensive care, during which it's really uncertain what will happen. And and we know from the scientific literature that these are definitely risk factors for more severe grief reactions.
Well, what will happen, because 10% of bereaved individuals statistically typically develop prolonged grief disorder. How's COVID going to change that?
Yeah, that is indeed the case after loss due to natural causes. We recently conducted the first quantitative study into this topic worldwide, together with Psychologen Nederland. And what we found in a very large survey of about 1,500 people is that people who experience loss due to COVID-19 actually have stronger acute grief than people who experience natural losses, such as losses due to long-term illness. And their acute grief levels are more or less similar to that experienced by people who have experienced unnatural loss. So then we're talking about accidents, murder, or suicide. So these are very strong grief responses, and we can expect that in the long run, the prevalence of prolonged grief, at least within this specific group, will go up.
And I believe you also have new findings on people grieving those who've died from other causes than corona during this pandemic. Yes,
thanks for asking. Yeah, we just had a paper accepted on this topic, and what was really striking is that we found that people who experience loss not due to corona and to the coronavirus actually also have elevated grief levels if the loss occurs during the pandemic, but not before it. So that really shows us that also within this group, there is people are experiencing more difficulties initially dealing with the loss.
Just in general, is the internet making it any easier for people to grieve?
Well, what you do see is that more people are meeting online. And this is not really a substitute, but I think that can be a way to stay in touch if you cannot meet face to face. But I think you might be referring to internet-based treatments. And in that case, I can say that internet-based treatments are indeed available. And in the Netherlands, there's also groups working on that. So there's people from the University of Groningen and people from Utrecht University developing online cognitive behavioral treatment for prolonged grief disorder, specifically for people who experienced the loss due to COVID-19. Okay. This is a very promising development.
Martin Eismer, thank you very much for coming on the show today. Let's check in now with Derek Williams, our science correspondent. He's been looking into your questions on the coronavirus.
Will the developments in the creation of a vaccine for this coronavirus help towards a vaccine against the coronaviruses that cause the common cold?
Wouldn't it be great if something positive came out of this pandemic, like other vaccines for other coronaviruses, for example, or even a universal coronavirus vaccine of some kind? Well, that isn't impossible, but it's pretty unlikely anytime soon. With all the resources that we're throwing at a COVID-19 vaccine, we're learning more every day about SARS-CoV-2, but we still have a long way to go in understanding the way that coronaviruses in general evolve and the ways that they're transmitted. And we still don't know nearly enough about what's called cross-reactivity, which is when the weapons your immune system produces to fight one infectious pathogen also work for others that have similar characteristics. There's some evidence that cross-reactivity in some people might be playing a role in how badly they get COVID-19 or how easily they fight it off, but it's all still very speculative. One promising avenue of research, for example, that could help in the development of future coronavirus vaccines involves what's called the S2 domain on coronavirus spikes, those proteins that stick out that the viruses use to latch onto cells that they're trying to infect. Researchers have discovered that these S2 domains seem to be pretty well preserved across the range of coronaviruses that infect humans. They're quite similar, regardless of which one you look at. That's a great potential starting point for working on a broader coronavirus vaccine, but it's only that. Who knows though, maybe one day the work that we're doing to stop COVID-19 might also finally help us stop its much less deadly cousins.